Yeah, this is Bill Jones again from recapturefederalism.com. And we're bringing another presentation on the air. Bill Jones from Freedom's Nest. We're at Freedom's Nest today with another presentation brought to you, of course, by recapturefederalism.com. I have been remiss in the past, and that is by telling people, letting people know you ought to come to Recapture Federalism and subscribe so we can have some communication. You can come in there, I can let you know when we're going to be doing another one and another broadcast. Going to be doing a regular broadcast, trying to set it up to where it's audio, and I'm going to put that on there. That probably will be so go on iTunes and what have you. We get some. I'm a capitalist, so we try and get some to monetize things. Going to be doing some other things too. I'm going to be in the process of doing a book, writing a book. All my life I've been saying, hey, Bill, you ought to write a book. And I keep saying, yeah, I'm going to write a book. Well, I'm going to finally get to it. The trouble is I'm not a good writer, so I'm not going to write it. I'm going to have an audio book or a video book, DVD or something of that sort, because I'm not a good writer. I share that with Rush Limbaugh. I guess I heard him say that too. That's why he doesn't ever use any scripts. So there you go. Today's presentation is titled Treason, Neither King nor Emperor, but Ho Chi Minh or Pol Pot. Wow, that's a mouthful. And we're going to get into that subject. About fed up with everything around here. I'm doing all this stuff, and the reason I'm doing this stuff is because you're not going to hear this stuff in the media, in the press, and that because they're all pro-communist. They don't want me saying this stuff, and I'm just getting tired of it. As if you've heard me before, I go back to the fact that I've been an anti-communist since 1960. And I'm going to go do now what I normally do, and that is I can take the oath. I, William R. Jones, do solemnly swear or affirm that I will support and defend the Constitution of the United States against all enemies, foreign and domestic, and that I will bear true faith and allegiance to the same, so help me God. And as I always say, I first took that oath in July 1965. When I went in, I was on a delayed entry program back then. They were getting so many people in. I was a delayed entry for inactive reserve for a couple of months till they could take me in and find a spot in boot camp for me at Great Lakes, believe it or not. And I took the oath again that day, November 2nd, 1965. The enemy at that time was communism. The enemy today, the biggest threat to America, probably as much internally as externally, is communism. We have a lot of people in public office who are adhering to the Communist Manifesto and the Communist guidelines, what have you. Been over that over and over and over, and we'll continue to do that. And it's our subject today. You know, we've got the president here who's doing executive orders. To start out with, these executive orders he's doing are unlawful. They're unlawful orders. Some of them, a lot of them. These executive orders on this Ferguson deal, that's unlawful orders. And we can get into it a little deeper here. But the fact is that they're unlawful orders. People who are sworn to, just as I did, don't have to follow and should not follow or are obligated not to follow unlawful orders. They need to make a decision. And that was decided for the military in 1953. There was legislation, Uniform Code of Military Justice. There wasn't any prior to 1953. So 160 years we had military service regulations promulgated by the services, and there were some problems. World War II and Korea, there were problems. They did not want to go have military responding the way the Nazi officers responded, is that they were just following orders. Then there was a problem in the Korean War with POWs who were brainwashed, and brainwashing was significantly by the communists. They're very good at it. They in fact have brainwashed in the United States millions of people and done a very good job. And it's the same techniques that were used in Korea. And that's in the Negro community, and I don't say black anymore. I think you've heard a previous presentation. Black, that's a communist terminology, communist language for the minorities. So in the Negro community, in fact, we probably really shouldn't even use any of the race things, because when you're separating people, that's class warfare. And that's what the communists are good at too, propaganda and agitation. And they have, through propaganda, enslaved and the people of color in the urban areas of cities. And you see with the result of that down in Ferguson, Missouri. Now, getting back to these executive orders, and people talk in the press, and there's a lot of people, constitutional scholars, and, I've given my opinion on them in the past. They don't ever talk about treason. You notice in the title, I have treason, because that's what we have going on all the time. That's what we have going on by the parties. I'm going to have in the near future a presentation about that. The political parties, in effect, are treason. And I'll show you the basis and origin of that also. But back to the topic of today. Mr. Obama, President Obama, is not acting like a king or an emperor. No, I recognize him for what he is. He's a communist. He's acting more like Ho Chi Minh and Pol Pot. And for you young folks out there, younger people who don't know who those two gentlemen are, Ho Chi Minh was the communist tyrant in North Vietnam. And through his behavior, we ended up with the Vietnam War. He violated agreements he made in the 50s on the division of Vietnam North and South. And he signed agreements that he would not invade or interrupt any activities down in the South. He sent people down there, Viet Cong, insurgents. Then he said, well, it's a civil war. Like a typical communist, he lies a lot. Pol Pot instituted and imposed a Soviet-style government and system in Cambodia in the 70s. A communist government. And what the communists are very good at are enslaving people, killing people. All sorts of evil acts and behavior. And they can't do it by themselves, by the way. It's involved in parties. The parties in Cambodia, the Khmer Rouge, the Communist Party of Kampuchea, they were adhering to the Communist Manifesto and the Communist guidelines of Communist Party. Ho Chi Minh in North Vietnam, he wasn't doing things by himself. There was a political party there. The Viet Minh. In fact, the Viet Minh, when the first American was killed, when in September 1945, a couple of weeks after VJ Day, the Viet Minh assassinated Lieutenant Colonel Peter Dewey. They assassinated him in Hanoi. They claimed it was a mistaken identity. They're good at lying. Lying. Speaking of lying, let's get right to the subject at hand. Mr. Obama, from day one in announcing, and prior to that, he's from Illinois, so am I. Prior to that, but we're going to go from day one of his announcing he was going to run for president of the United States. And the first thing out of his mouth was a lie, because he was telling everybody that he was black. And as I just got through saying a few minutes ago, that's a communist term. The fact is, scientifically, through DNA, you would find out that Mr. Obama is mixed race. His mother was white, his father was black, mixed race. In the Latin community, in the Hispanic community, they call that mulatto. We used to call that too, but you know the communists didn't like that. So to have the class warfare, if you say mulatto, it's not very good. Well, there's nothing bad about that. Like I say, the Latins say that all the time. And what does mulatto mean? It means you have one of your parents is white, and the other parent is black, or another race, two different races. So it's mixed race. But you see, Obama, he doesn't want to say he's a communist, so he'll use the communist terms. You'll hear him all the time. After 50 years, I can tell a communist as soon as they open up their mouths and say a few words. And they're all over the place. Sharpton, Jesse Jackson, Harry Belafonte, for instance, he is an acknowledged and self-confessed communist. He was a mentor of Paul Robeson. So let's not stop beating around the bush. The man's a communist, Mr. Obama. And why do I say that? Well, I got news for you. His father was an atheist and a communist from Kenya. And he had one publication, and I'm going to put up on the screen here in a second that showed that publication. Now, why not? Most of you people out there, whoever hears me, are going to say, why haven't we heard about this before? That's a good question. Why haven't you? That's because the press, who's pro-communist, hides this fact. You know, back in the day, in 1959 and 1960, Jack Kennedy, Senator Jack Kennedy, John Fitzgerald Kennedy, announced that he was going to run for president and seek the nomination of the Democratic Party to be president. Man alive, the press, the first Catholic going to be the president, and we're going to have to look at this guy and look at his background and look at his family. Come on, he comes from a famous family. His father had been an ambassador to, I believe it was England, under Roosevelt, another communist, by the way. I'll get into that sometime. But, you know, we heard all about the Kennedy family, everything. It was very transparent. Now it comes along, and we got some secrets going on with Mr. Obama. And people have gone over that all over his school records, where he come from, where he was born, and all this kind of stuff. And let's assume that his father is Barack Obama Sr. If you go to Wikipedia, and this is how hard it is to find out about this information. If you go to Wikipedia and you look up Obama Sr., it'll tell you about him. He went to he was raised in a village which was a Muslim village. He was not Muslim. It was a colony. Kenya was a colony of England, UK. UK had brought education into the colonies. There was some good things brought about by the colonizations, either by the French or the British or Dutch or whoever. In many cases, they brought in education that had not been there before. The missionaries brought some in, and Anglican schools were there, and that's where Obama Sr., when he was growing up, went to an Anglican school. Now, I don't know if he ever was Christian, but he did deny the Lord, and he was a atheist growing up by the time he came to America. A communist atheist. Very common. Atheist and communism goes hand in hand. I've been over that before in previous presentations. But if you go in there, it tells you right down there, publication. He had one publication, and it is The Problems Facing Our Socialism. Barack H. Obama. That's the Barack there is the African spelling. No C. And so, you know how I found out about this? If you saw the movie Obama 2016, Dinesh D'Souza has on there, big on the screen is one paragraph from this document. When I saw that movie, I looked at it and I said, where does that come from? D'Souza tells us it comes from a thing that was written by, article that was written by Obama Sr. Wait a minute, I left the movie a couple days after that. I didn't recognize, he didn't show the title. He didn't show the title. So I had to go looking. And I went to Wikipedia, got the information about Obama Sr. there, and there it was. I've downloaded that. Now, the press hasn't ever talked about this documentation. In fact, D'Souza's on with Megyn Kelly. They don't even talk about this. Now they don't talk about this. Again, what are they hiding? Well, they don't want to acknowledge in there. In fact, if you look real close, there's communism is right down there in the right top of the right-hand column in this article. Scientific socialism, they're talking about African socialism. Yeah, that's what they're doing. They're talking about that stuff. And in fact, on that page here, I got the article out here. Let me read it a little bit out of here. Since many of the African countries achieved their independence, there has been much talk about African socialism. Moreover, there have been no individual or country which had at any time defined as socialism, nor has there been any common ground among the leaders as to what they meant when they talked of African socialism. Where then could we look for the definition of this ism? If it is accepted that it is the leaders of the country who usually formulate and define ideologies, then the only source for this definition would be to get it from them either through their speeches, press reports, or papers, or through their actions. Wow! You could define that could define American communism, how it's defined. And that's how, no speech, people don't omit it. But look at their actions. Look at their behavior. And that's what you got in America. And Obama Sr. was talking about that. July 1965, by the way, I mentioned that before. That's the same month that I joined the United States Navy. Same month, same year. And he was over in Kenya. He been thrown out of Harvard because they come to find out he had a couple wives. He marries Junior's mother. She's pregnant. He marries her. Doesn't bother telling her he's got a wife and kids, or at least a wife, back in Kenya. Well, Harvard finds out and they send him back later on. But Obama's father, is a communist, or was a communist. And he was multiracial. African American. And his mama would be as white as my mama. Okay? Which is just fine. But let's be honest about it. No, you're going to stir off the pot there. Class warfare. That's what the communists are good at doing, class warfare. And that's how they do it, by saying, using the term black. And what you have going on in Ferguson and Missouri, and Mr. Obama is deeply involved in that. I showed you that my observational graphic that I show all the time. Secret, silent insurrection. That is what is going on in Ferguson, Missouri. Now, the press doesn't tell you that either, do they? No, 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 no. Because they're in big time being pro-communist right along with it. It's all part of the same seditious conspiracy, insurrection, all of this stuff. And I'll continue to talk about it. Maybe sometime the press will get to talk about it. But I tell you what, you come back to my site, subscribe to it. We're going to be putting more stuff out. You can hear more about it, and it's stuff you will not hear on the news. You will not hear, even on Fox. Fox is almost as bad as the rest of them anymore. They've gotten worse. I see here not too long ago that Mr. Murdoch, he can live with Clinton, Hillary Clinton. Can you imagine that? She wrote a book, Yeah, it takes a village. She left the word out. It takes a communist village because she's that way too, That the whole Democratic Party is that way. Some of them pretty hardcore communist in the Democratic Party. You know what? You're not supposed to talk about that. Why not? They kill people. Accessories after the fact, 33,000 plus Americans in Korea, 58,000 plus in Southeast Asia and Vietnam, all at the hands of the communists. And they don't talk about that. Korean War is still going on. They got ceasefire, that's all. 69 when I was over in the Pacific. Yeah, 31 killed, unarmed aircraft shot down by the communists. Oh yeah, but we had demonstrations going on, anti-war. We shouldn't be involved in that war. We should just let the commies do whatever they want. And until the next time, Bill Jones from recapturefederalism.com.